A different tone and pace defined this head-to-head between the presidential hopefuls. Gone were the chaos and constant interruptions of their first meeting. This time, the event was more of a conventional debate, with the coronavirus pandemic given the most minutes on the clock. Trump offered an optimistic view on the way forward.
It's been like a prison. It will go away, and as I say, we're rounding the turn, we're rounding the corner. It's going away. We have a vaccine that's coming, it's ready, it's going to be announced within weeks, and it's going to be delivered.
Biden condemned Trump's record in dealing with the crisis.
220,000 Americans dead. Anyone who's responsible for that many deaths should not remain as President of the United States of America.
The issue of race was also in focus.
The fact of the matter is, there is institutional racism in America. And we have always said, we've never lived up to it, that we hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women are created equal. Well, guess what? We have never, ever lived up to it, but we've always constantly been moving the needle further and further to inclusion, not exclusion. This is the first president to come along and says that's the end of that.
Nobody has done more for the black community than Donald Trump. And if you look, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln, possible exception, but the exception of Abraham Lincoln, nobody has done what I've done.
The debate gradually got more heated, and Trump's separation policy for migrant children came under fire.
Parents were ripped, their kids were ripped from their arms and separated. And now they cannot find over 500 sets of those parents, and those kids are alone. Nowhere to go. Nowhere to go. It's criminal. It's criminal.
Let me ask
Kristen,
you about
I will say this. They went down. We brought reporters, everything. They are so well taken care of. They're in facilities that were so clean.
But some of them haven't been reunited with
But just
their
ask
families.
one question. Who built the cages? I'd love you to ask him that. Who built the cages?
Let me ask about...
Voters finally got something resembling a substantive argument, but it's unlikely to have a major impact on the electorate. A record 45 million Americans have so far taken advantage of early voting, and polls show a majority of those yet to vote had already decided what they'll write on their ballot.
So we heard a lot of bold claims there from both sides, but were they all credible? Let's bring in DW's head of fact-checking, Joshua Weber. Joshua, coronavirus was one of the main issues, of course. President Trump said the U.S. was rounding the corner in fighting the disease. Is there any way of knowing whether the U.S. is really over the worst?
I'm afraid that's not the case. President Trump indicates that the United States are being over the hump already, that the crisis will be over soon. This is not true, and here's why. The US are facing right now a new rise of cases. Official numbers are showing a third surge, actually. There were more than 65,000 new cases for just one day, according to the US Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and there are other numbers which are even higher than this. This is a sharp rise of around 30% compared to 2 weeks earlier. So the numbers are more concerning than relaxing, we have to say, and further during this debate, President Trump claims that his administration has done a great job in handling and controlling the pandemic. A new study in the Journal of the American Medical Association tells us a different story. The US have not only have the biggest absolute number of COVID deaths, as we all know already. Over the past 5 months, the rate of deaths per capita was bigger than in the 18 other high-income countries in this report. So I don't think that the coronavirus will be defeated soon in the US.
Okay. Another topic was health care. Donald Trump keeps attacking Joe Biden about the previous administration's reforms known as Obamacare. Let's first listen to what Biden had to say on that.
Not one single person with private insurance would lose their insurance under my plan, nor did they under Obamacare.
Okay, straightforward statement. Can you verify it, Yosha?
Sure. Joe Biden claims that not one person lost the health insurance under Obamacare. This is at least misleading, we have to say. Then President Barack Obama promised that everyone could keep his health insurance under the Affordable Care Act, the ACA, but that's not what happened for all, actually. When Obamacare took effect in 2014, it was 5.9 million people who lost their individual health insurance plans following a study by US think tank RAND. So Biden is wrong here. But on the other hand, we have to say that more than 22 million US citizens now have health insurance through the ACA. So we have to say that net, there was a gain.
Joscha, thank you very much. That was DW's head of fact-checking, Joscha Weber. Our reporter, Sumi Somaskanda in Washington, has been following the debate for us, and she sent us this analysis.
In the final debate before Election Day, we got to witness an actual debate. Some of the changes that were made to the format, the muting of the mics, were very effective, and both the candidates and the moderator got to cover a lot of ground. Now, the consensus here is that President Trump delivered a very strong performance, that he was less combative, delivered a more affirmative view on some of his policies. And this was the president that many Republicans, strategists, and his supporters were waiting for and hoping for. Now, Joe Biden supporters believe that he also was very convincing, delivering a strong performance on questions like COVID-19 and the ethics, the decency that needs to be part of the presidency and brought into the White House. Now, there were some half-truths and false statements issued by both candidates tonight, particularly from President Trump. And one thing to keep in mind is that with just 11 days left to go until the election, more than 40 million Americans have already cast their ballots. There are not that many undecided voters left. So it is hard to imagine that this debate performance from both candidates will actually sway the outcome of the election.
In the United States, you can win an election by millions of votes, but still not become president. Just look at the last presidential election. So, if the popular vote doesn't decide the president, whose votes really count? Let's take a closer look. About 330 million people live in the United States, out of which roughly 250 million people are eligible to vote. That's 78% of the population. Minors, non-citizens, and many former convicts are excluded from casting ballots. But a huge chunk of those who could vote simply don't. Only a little over half of eligible voters have taken part in recent elections. If that holds true again, only about 137 million people would cast a ballot. This time around, expanded early voting due to the pandemic could send that number higher. But millions of votes never really end up helping the candidate for which they were cast. Why? Because you don't win the presidency by securing enough of the national popular vote. Instead, candidates win by racking up enough victories in state-by-state contests that culminate on Election Day. And virtually every state uses the winner-take-all system. So, in most states, if you vote for a losing candidate, you're out of luck. There, it's only the winner who benefits from the votes cast. Last time around, 61 million people cast votes for candidates who lost at the state level. Take Texas, for example. President Trump beat Hillary Clinton. So, under the winner-takes-all system, Texas went into his column of wins. The state victories add up to determine a national winner in a way that's proportional to the state's population. The winner-takes-all systems influence the election in another major way, by focusing attention on what's called the battleground states. Opinion polls and past elections mean we already know how many of the biggest states, like New York or California, are likely to vote. So instead of focusing on those states, candidates campaign heavily in just a handful of places where the outcome is open. This time around, these are some of the states that could be decisive. And out of the 137 million likely voters this year, roughly 36 million of them live in these battleground states. That's about a tenth of the entire US population. They get the lion's share of the candidates' attention because they will most likely determine who wins enough of the state-by-state contests to claim the presidency. Studies on the last election found that the vast majority of campaign events were held in only a handful of key states. Critics accuse the US electoral system of being undemocratic by not giving each vote the same weight, or by inflating the influence of some regions over others. The system that underlies all of this is called the Electoral College, and that system is unlikely to go away, despite opinion polls showing that most people in America would like to see it abolished. Doing so would take a 2/3 agreement among lawmakers in Congress. That's exceptionally rare to achieve in an era of heavy partisan polarization.